Christi Myers, welcome to Security Halt. How you doing?
I am wonderful, Denny. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, it's been a minute. It's officially been over a year. We've been trying to make this happen.
Yes, the timing is divine, so
Right?
I just allow it to unfold.
Yeah, man. It's funny. Like we get in these rushes and we try to make schedules happen and things happen, and eventually you just got to let life happen and circle back and stay in touch. And we finally made it happen. But
Totally.
today we want to dive into ketamine. I was just talking to a good friend of mine, Rebecca Ivory. Shout out to you, tactical nurse, or tactical psychiatry, an amazing, we like to call her doctor nurse. But in this world of rapidly evolving modalities and new things for us to utilize to heal and get better and reconnect with our true self, um, individuals such as myself within our veteran space, we're hungry for new things that we can utilize to heal and get better. But we don't always know where to go. And we don't always like to arm ourselves with knowledge. We just want to jump in. We want to dive in because after all, that suited us perfectly in the military. Just go bravely into the unknown. But sometimes we have to take a knee. We have to take a knee and talk to people that are in this field, that are in this space, and get some background information on these awesome therapies and modalities before we dive in. That way we can be informed. But before we dive into ketamine therapy, I want to dive into your story. How did Christi get in this place? How did you find yourself in this area?
Well, ketamine found me. So I've been in emergency medicine since I was 18.
Oh, shit.
Yes, so many moons. I was waitressing. So my mom put me to work, because I was becoming mischievous and I was, not being engaged with a lot of the things that are saturated in my intelligence. So I became mischievous, right? So she put me to work. And we had this huge fire, and there was over like 200 firemen that came in the restaurant, and I was 14 years old. And I was like, that is what I want to do. And so when I turned 18, that's what I was prepping for. I went into wildland fire, completely not knowing the hierarchy, the ranking, the structures, or any of that. And after 3 years of sleeping in the dirt and really being just down and gritty, I was like, how the hell are those municipal guys doing that? And why do they look so clean? How do you go that way? And so it was just this evolution, right, of just being divinely guided and inspired by men of caliber in that profession, right? They watched me growing up in the restaurant. I was given opportunities to be sponsored in the fire departments and really nurtured by a lot of at that time, some were captains evolving into the hierarchy of the chief ranking systems. And that's when the medical side of it started also coming online for me. The more I was participating in the service, the more I was seeing how medical came into play. This is 1998, 1999. So before it was a prerequisite that you had to be a paramedic, right?
Yeah.
I actually went through the fire academy the same time I was becoming an EMT. So I
Oh,
ran them
shit.
concurrently. They didn't even require it yet at that point. And you had to be sponsored. You couldn't just sign up for it, right? A department had to put you through rather than you being able to just be like, hey, I want to go try to become this. And so I spent a lot of time in that and many different areas. At the same time, I was still waitressing because my mom owned a restaurant, and I honored that, right? I mean, I
Yeah.
worked with her for over 20 years, which customer service is a very important skill to have, especially as it pertains to public service.
Yeah. It humbles you. It humbles
Oh,
you.
well, I used to joke, I'm like, I'm serving biscuits and gravy over here, and then I'm giving nitro and aspirin over here. Like,
Yeah.
this is kind of a double negative, right? Uh, and so as I progressed in just the field and the industry, I started studying the actual intricacies of becoming to be able to come into the classroom more intentionally. And so I did my undergrad and my grad, which then allowed me to come on as a full-time professor. I spent about a decade as adjunct and professional expert. And then after finishing my master's degree, I came in as a professor, earning tenure. And it was during that time frame that ketamine entered our classroom, right? So I primarily taught anatomy, physiology, pharmacology, and the theoretical side of medicine. And
And what did you
ketamine,
teach at?
I taught at a community college up in Southern California, and ketamine came into our drug box. And I was like, wait a minute. So I had seen ketamine utilized not only in flight medicine, I was a flight paramedic as well too. So I worked with the DoD, the
Damn,
VA. I worked for the
that's not
Sheriff's
easy.
Department, Air Rescue. Yeah. Well, thank you. I really
It's not
was,
easy.
I was one hell of an adrenaline junkie. I was chasing it, man. And so when ketamine first came in the classroom, I really had to embody it because I knew of ketamine, but from a conscious sedation perspective when I worked in the emergency room, from an RSI component when I worked flight medicine, and for us to secure an airway. And then I worked ground medicine and I saw recreational ketamine usage and what that looked like with polydrug exposure and people in crisis. So I had been exposed to ketamine in lots of different iterations, but not at my current level of consciousness or comprehension. And so as I lectured on ketamine, I had 3 different cohorts a year, right? So I was lecturing from brand new, inspired EMTs who just got their time and grade to come to paramedic school and still couldn't buy beer. And then I was lecturing to men and women that had been in the service for 15 plus years. And this was the opportunity for them to become ALS providers or medics. And they had spent a long time in the field. So they had a great conceptual awareness. So I had this huge, diverse audience that I was really lecturing the medicine to. At the same time, I was learning it very intentionally as well. So I didn't speak out of ignorance. And you can wing a lot of shit, but you can't wing those types of lectures because those guys can see right through that shit.
Yeah, I would imagine.
For sure, for sure. You may be able to get away with it with EMT, you know what I mean? There's like some
Yeah,
first responder things because they are just as green as the day comes. But as they progress, and especially as they've been in the industry, you know who's full of shit or not. And so I really tried to make sure that I was doing more studying than they were, right? Because if I could teach it, then what am I doing standing there trying to bring to birth this new group of individuals who are going to go out there and be frontliners?
yeah,
And then in 2020, it was just this divine inspiration and guidance for me to really just start building what is now Flow Integrative as ketamine infusion for reducing suffering, evolving our consciousness, and truly making a significant impact for the ascension of our species. How do we become a more evolved version of ourselves when we're stuck in hurry and worry and speed and aggression?
yeah. Fight or flight, constantly
Oh, yeah.
tapped into that primitive side of our brain, thinking that we have to constantly react rather than take a knee, take in data, and react. It's we get taught all these different ways to be present, be mindful, whether we understand that's what we are taught or not. But they show it all the time, but it never resonates within our warrior culture to really pause, think, then take action. It's quickly become this thing where you're just constantly just reacting, and you're a slave to impulse. And that's
Right.
something that we don't do a good job of coming out of that mindset. And then we realize that like that's also leading us down the pipeline of always being anxious, always being anxiety, always being prone to having exhaustion. Like that's reality. Like we can quickly get to the point where we're addicted to surviving and we don't even realize it. Addicted to surviving. And I see people that constantly get into this loop of self-sabotage when things are starting to get to the point where you're starting to thrive, when you're starting to really like have all your right habits, things are going right in your life, and you're starting to realize that there's an ability to breathe and live right. And you're like, wait a second, this is unknown. I hate this. Fuck that. I want to go back to surviving mode where it's all chaotic. And like, that's not the way we're meant to live. Like you can get used to it, but we're not meant to live that way.
Right. And then there becomes this proverbial fork in the road where how long can the body sustain or endure that type of endogenous release? without repercussions. And so then we start to see the compounding of autoimmunity, endocrine disorders, disruption of sleep cycles and circadian rhythm, which then impacts testosterone, which now here comes sleep apnea and impotency, and we're normalizing diabetes. And then we talk about all of our coping mechanisms with alcohol and addiction, distraction, distortion, perversion. And so then you have all this lower dimensional energy, which then that also can become trauma bonded, to where we're seeking it, and then the universe mirrors it back to us to reinforce it. And then, rock bottom becomes one hell of a solid foundation, but sometimes we have to hit it numerous times before we're able to really catapult out of it.
Yeah. So let's dive into ketamine. I know that there's two really popular protocols, one for pain and one for dealing with things like trauma. How does it help with individuals that are suffering from things like PTSD?
Well, as you made mention, that primal side of the brain, right, or the animalistic, the default mode network.
Mm-hmm.
So when we have significant imprints of trauma, they get seared as a core memory, which can also be languaged as the default mode network. And then we continuously ruminate, ideate, and perpetuate, which then deepens that network. You can almost envision like the whole shot for dirt bikes, right? Or like a mogul or a black diamond run. It's rutted in there.
Mm-hmm.
And how deep is it rutted in there? And what have you done as far as the behaviors around this, right? And so where ketamine comes in is it temporarily dissolves that network, or it temporarily takes the energy away from that recurring energy source of that network, which is phenomenal, because now it gives the brain opportunity to expand, to breathe, to cultivate new ways of thinking and being and doing. There's new consciousness being birthed outside of it. It's like collateral circulation or new neural circuitry, right? We talk about all this neurogenesis, but what's truly happening is that that pathway is being temporarily suspended or disengaged. And now you have this adequacy of new energy and information that's starting to circulate outside of it, allowing you to now observe rather than participate.
Now,
And so,
is ketamine actually changing anything biologically, or like when it comes to like that, the brain or axon or dendrites, is it doing anything at that level to actually change the way that we're possibly thinking when it comes to like, any triggers or anything like that?
for sure. And that's the verbiage is important, because by no means is ketamine a panacea, right? Like the one conversation that I see not many are having is about free will. So we can come into ketamine and want to evolve, want to deduce our suffering, relieve symptoms, no longer be positive for PTSD. And if the medicine shows you, right, this is where the medicine is self-revealing and it's opportunistic. So when you become the observer of yourself rather than the participant, the information that comes forward is intimate to the individual.
Mm.
So now if the medicine shows me that I am brash or that I am self-sabotaging, then now I have a choice to make. I can either embody that information and start really shifting the way that I'm showing up, my behaviors, my actions, the things that I'm saying, my unconsciousness, or I can try to ignore it. Because who knows what happens, right? This is the variable that none of us are talking about. You can have an amazing experience with the medicine and it can show you so many beautiful insights into yourself. Sometimes they're uncomfortable. So, what are you going to do with that when you go home? Can you embody it? Can you become it? Can you evolve? And for some of us, we can't. We're not there yet, right? Like it's just like, how many times does an alcoholic have to go to AA? Sometimes it's a dozen. Sometimes it's not
Mm.
until after he fucking smashes his car. What is it, right? Where's our point where we decide we're like, okay, I'm sick of my own shit. Now I'm shifting. But for a large majority, when we're in our trauma, we're so enmeshed in that energy that we don't even know that we're walking around with this urgency, with this speed and aggression, the hurry and worry, what it's doing to us physiologically. And so when we're able to separate and actually expand our consciousness, create new ways of thinking, become opportunistic with the way that we're perceiving, create space between our triggers, now we have an opportunity to evolve.
Yeah.
And for some of us, that may take some time. So that's why they call it a hero's journey, because it's no bullshit as far as what you're cultivating and the work that needs to be done. It's not this bippity boppity,
Yeah.
you're cured.
There's a
kind of thing.
misconception with
100%.
what it means to heal and overcome things. We latch on to themes or movies and we think that's what recovery looks like. That's what overcoming mental health looks like. The character goes through this period of evolving. He faces his demons, gets the girl, wraps up, drives off into the sunset, and fade to black, credits. And we think that's how we want our life and story to evolve. But the reality is, more often than not, you're going to become, yes, you'll be the hero, but then you'll become the villain, and then you'll drive yourself off the road, and then you'll be in uncharted territory. Then you got to pull off, get your compass out, get yourself back on the straight and narrow, and that's life. It's a journey. Mental health is a journey. You understand that it's not about living a life with padding and extra layers of protection, but going into the unknown with the tools and resources you've gotten from professionals, from treatment, and understanding that, hey, like, life's a contact sport. I'm going to have to be brave. I'm going to have to be strong and develop resilience. And it's not always going to be pretty. It's not always going to be easy. And there's access to resources like ketamine. And when it comes to ketamine, one thing that I've heard is it doesn't have a long, when it comes to treatment options, it's not like once and done. It's not like you go in for one ketamine infusion treatment and then it's perfect.
Well, one can be done because some people that sit with it are like, I'm not fucking doing the work.
Yeah.
And you honor that. At least for me as a
Yeah.
practitioner, I honor that.
Yeah.
I had a woman only one time in the last 5 years. She's like, look, I realized that I don't want to come off prescription drugs. I don't like my husband. I have no skills that I can go get a job and I'm way too old for this shit. I'm staying in it.
Oh,
but you
red
know what
pill,
that
blue
brought
pill.
her? For sure. But you know what that brought her? That brought her peace.
Made it, yeah, you know.
She decided.
Fuck, Christy, I want to pause on that case study right now. Just realize that's the truth. That's the reality. You either realize the work that you're going to have to do to get through, not to like, again, veer off into another movie analogy, but, you have to look at Shawshank Redemption in that last bit of the movie where Andy is crawling through the sewer line to escape the prison. That's your journey to get to the start of your healing journey. You got to crawl through a lot of shit.
Your own shit.
Yeah, you got to unpack.
Your own shit.
You got to unpack all your shit and own it. Mm-hmm. And it's not pretty. Because
sometimes it has parasites.
Yeah, you got to look at yourself in the mirror and realize, like, I haven't been a good parent. I haven't been a good father. I haven't been a good teammate. I haven't been a good person. And you get through that. And on the other side, you realize, but I can be. Mm-hmm. But I can be a good man. I can be a good husband. I can be a good father. I can be a reliable teammate again. I can be a good dude on a team again. I can be a great asset again. Or you take the blue pill and just say, fuck it. No, you believe your own myth. I'm like, I am a fucking great person. I'll stay in this. And that's a choice.
It's a choice, because the uncomfortability is when we're straddling.
Yeah.
Because for some, right, they're like, I don't want to stay married, and they're in this fuck this energy, which is profound energy to be in. I don't know how much of my life I used to just say, fuck it. I give a shit. I don't not give a shit. Like, it was so important the way that we use our words, right? And so for some, they may be in this area where they're creating nothing but contention. They're waking up every day and they're like, I don't like this. I don't want to be here. I don't want to do this. And then you go seek something outside of yourself. But in reality, ketamine is 100% inside of yourself, right?
Yeah.
Sure, you're utilizing a tool that comes from Earth, that is synthesized for IV administration, which is straight to source. And then it's allowing you to become the observer of yourself. That to me is courage, right? How many people are willing to look at themselves? Because no matter what, in all of our story, we are the common denominator.
Yep.
And that in itself is profound, right? And so if you're willing to go within and to look, and then that helps you decide, you're like, well, I guess this isn't too bad over here as comparison to what this is. I'm staying over here, and then you let it go.
Yeah.
So now you can show up in that current life and reality, no longer resisting, which is great. I personally, I'm on a trajectory. I'm on a growth path. I want to continuously keep evolving to be the greatest version of myself so that I can evolve out of Earth. Right?
No.
I mean, that's what I'm doing. That's where I'm tracking. And or just to become the most evolved version, right? We only
Yeah.
use 5% of our conscious brain. What are we doing? Like, why wouldn't you want to evolve your consciousness?
Yeah.
It's mind-boggling to me when that becomes the conversation, right? If we know that we have 70,000 thoughts a day and 60,000 of them are from the day before, isn't that indicative of the fact that we're just continuously dragging along all past previous experiences into our current day reality, and we're trying to create a new life, but we can't because we're bringing in only the past and our perceptions of previous experiences to cultivate this space and time,
Yeah.
which is kind of silly to me, right? I want to cultivate new ways of thinking, being, doing, but utilizing my past as wisdom so that I don't keep making the same types of, not mistakes, right? Because they're all lessons.
Yeah.
But
But
I
following the same path
same
or
patterns,
thinking,
same
yeah.
programs. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, just
Yeah.
bringing cycling new people.
Yeah. That's something that I've realized a lot of people have trouble with. How do they break the cycle?
Mhm.
And it goes, we first tend to acknowledge it when we see ourselves in the same relationships when we're younger. But then it becomes a pattern of like what jobs to go after. Because a lot of people that I've dealt with that are struggling, it's like, dude, like you left the military, now you're in this continuous cycle of you're not finding your right chapter. You're just going after job, and then you leave and you quit. And it's the same song and pattern, but they don't even recognize it.
Mhm.
They're not observing it and really sitting down and seeing like, oh shit, I'm constantly blaming everybody else and blaming this whole lived experience on somebody else. And it's like, dude, you're the problem. You're not happy, and you're continuously trying to find happiness in the same empty places. Like, how do we get out of that? How do we help somebody find that they're the issue, that they're the ones who are constantly seeking the same cycle? That seems to be something that I run into a
For
lot.
sure. Well, it's through our own evolution, right? To heal the mothers, to heal the children, and vice versa, right? For us to do the work. I mean, that's what so many of the great teachers have all different phraseologies or mantras around it, right? Karma is the mind. We are walking each other home. The common denominator in all of our story is self, right? And
Yeah.
so when you think about that, when we evolve, or the other is, I wanted to change the world. Now I realize that I just need to change myself. Uh, there is no greater time in the history of our species, because we're not very old either, which is also so funny to me because we're all just practicing. We all just take other people's intellectual property and manipulate it by adding another ingredient and calling it our own. And then we think we're evolving because we got an iPhone 16. You know what I mean? Like, what are we doing as a species?
That's not evolution.
No,
But the clarity in the
we're
camera,
not even.
Christy,
We're
it's
not
fucking
even a
awesome.
level 1 civilization. We still have trash pyramids, for fuck's sake. You know what I mean? Like, what are we
Don't get me started
doing?
on that.
What
We
are
gotta
we
get.
doing?
We gotta start talking about Dyson spheres.
God. And so, if we were to evolve our consciousness, right? Like, what are we on Earth for?
Yeah.
And it's not to decimate and procreate and have these primal, but again, evolution is a choice.
Yeah.
So part of it is even the fundamentals, right? And I'll take, for example, like where some of these epiphanies came in for me. When we're in medic school, and perhaps this is also true for the medical training that you receive, right? We're studying the heart, we're studying the lung, we're studying the nervous system, but never do they realize that we're literally just reading about ourselves.
Yeah.
Like we're like, oh, this is so hard. And you're like, dude, that thing's inside your chest. So it's creating separation, right? That's why, and we've created separation in medicine in totality, right? Like I just do gynecology, I just do colorectal, I just do cardiac, I just talk about the brain. And because the brain requires such specificity, those guys are few and far between. Those
Yeah.
are the 1 to 3%ers. And then, you have the mass majority of like, I'm just general practice. And then, but we still separate that out as if there's
Yeah.
still so many doctors that don't think the brain has anything to do with the body, which is why we're in this separation of mental health versus medical model. They're
Yeah.
like, I don't do mental health. You're like, oh, so you don't think my brain has anything to do with the severity of the trauma I'm suppressing in the physical body that is manifested as autoimmunity?
Yeah. And the thing that's fascinating on the brain is like we're still in various camps as to what cognition truly is
Oh yeah.
and what frameworks to use. Like it's to me like that's something that I'm studying right now, and the fact that there are divisions within cognitive science and theorists, and it's a computational model, and no, it's dynamical research, and it's like okay, like can we just admit that we may not know right now, that we may
We're
not
all just
truly
guessing.
That's like one of the things that I wanted to write about in my latest fucking papers. Like you have two camps and two different ideas, and then there's constantly infighting, and there's new revelations. Maybe we don't know the true. Maybe we don't know yet. We don't understand cognition as well as we want to believe that we do. Because at the end of the day, like it's understanding consciousness when it comes to like the studying the science is one thing, but how about you just pause and reflect on your own consciousness, especially if you've ever utilized medicine such as 5-MeO-DMT and ketamine, and utilized any of those medicinal journeys to really explore and really communicate with the medicine, like you said earlier, because it's really talking to you, and that'll blow your fucking mind.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's also fascinating to, well, if you look at the levels of consciousness, right? No time in history has it ever been so clear of the separation of the way that people have different thought processes. And what's even more fascinating is everyone thinks that they're right.
Yeah. Yeah.
If that isn't blatant ego, that I don't know what is, right? So for a large majority, they're like, I would never do drugs as they're drinking coffee on their phone. And they just railed out their
Slamming their
third
fifth of
cupcake.
Jameson.
Yep.
Yeah.
We lose 1,300 people a day because of fatness. Nobody's running around like, do you
Trying
have
to ban it.
sugar? Do you
Yeah.
have sugar? Yeah, I do. And I have like 75 different forms of it. And I consume the shit out of it. I have an active addiction. Nobody's like, oh, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
But then you talk about utilizing things from Earth for our own evolution or inner actualization and awareness and cultivation. And that becomes this, I don't want to touch it. And those are the people this isn't resonant with. It may not be this lifetime for them.
Yeah.
Because if there is one thing that we know for certainty is that DMT or dimethyltryptamine is the most organic, innate thing that is always present, but lying dormant inside of us. We're waking up a latent system, and we can do it through breath. Do you know how many people don't know?
Holotropic breathing.
For sure.
Yeah.
You can tap into DMT organically.
Yeah. That's one thing that so I first started getting into meditation and mindfulness before I was out of the military. And the drive was to utilize something or get as good as I could to utilize my own resources in my own body to take care of my anxiety, to deal with depression, because you can't tap into plant medicine while you're still in. You can't tap into all these trials or clinical trials while you're still in, but you can meditate and you can learn how to do breathing, and you can learn how to do things that can help you tap into your own regulatory systems. Like that's the thing that like that. And it's incredibly empowering. You're having a panic attack and you can go to your car and breathe and meditate and bring yourself down and not reach for another fucking medication.
Well, you know what blows my mind, Denny? So, what are hops and what are barley? They're plants.
Yeah.
And that makes
and it's
beer
consumed.
yummy, right? So at what point, like if you look at, there's only 6 spirits, which is our booze system, that then gets monopolized by sugar, labeling,
Yeah.
colors, and additives. They come from earth. Agave is tequila.
Yeah.
Potatoes are vodka. What in the shit are we doing as a species to where we think that booze is okay, but we can't consume if we're active duty something that comes from earth organically that didn't have a smear campaign, but in reality it actually did, because look at the prohibition.
Yeah.
And then we're like, wait a second, does this lower people's consciousness and have them make shitty decisions?
Yeah.
Full send it. Give them some cigarettes too. Dip that
Put
shit
it in their
Dip
MREs.
that shit in formaldehyde.
Which we did for a long time.
Hell
Lucky
yeah, we
strikes.
did. Well, let's give them a laxative because this shit's gonna block them up. We don't want them shitting in the bush.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So stupid.
But it's you look at the people that maintain these medicines for a long time, and we in our modern society look down upon them like, oh my God, they're so primitive in their jungles. And it's like, well, maybe they realized what they needed to survive and what they needed to sustain themselves was, just what they have. They didn't need to move forward. It's like we're happy. Like, look what we have. We have abundance. Like, we have food, we have family, we have connection, we have a tribe, we have this medicine. This is what it does for us. Like, it's weird. We look down on people or cultures when they're not as advanced as us. Look, they don't have tech. They don't have heated water. Oh my God! Like, it's like, yeah, like, take a look at your experience. Take a look how alien, how foreign it would seem to them to be a slave to a freaking phone, constantly consuming food that just makes you sick.
Literally.
Yeah. In your own journey with ketamine, how did you first start? Was it a curiosity? Were you seeking it for relief? Were you trying to overcome something that you dealt with? Or was it just because you were exploring its abilities to help and heal others?
Well, this is a beautiful opportunity to tell this story, right? It was actually a download of information into my nervous system to just start building. So the more that I lectured on ketamine, now at the time as a professor, I was really embodying the Pygmalion effect. What does it mean to erase all of my own barriers to entry for people to succeed? Right? Here's the standards, here's the bar, here's how to get there. Demonstrate the competency to the greatest of your awareness and your level of consciousness, because if it was the case, then we as professors hold people in contempt based off of what we think that they're supposed to achieve based off of our standards, which creates impossibility. I was really trying to embody dissolving that wounded mindset in education, right? We had people in positional power that were like, when I was a kid, I used to have to walk to the library, no shoes on, duct tape. You know what I mean? You're like, who cares?
Yeah.
They're never going to do that at this age. This is not their story. And so they were trying to force their, you know what I mean? You know how it goes with the old mindsets. And here's the bar, get there. Show me that you know what the information is to the greatest of your capacity. And so I really started taking all the pharmacology and introducing it early in anatomy physiology and taking it all the way through theory. Because the other thing I was witnessing was that once we passed a certain uh, module, if you will, they data dumped it. So if you learned anatomy and physiology and we power washed it into you for 6 weeks, you didn't know shit about it come the time that you needed to actually put drug administration in because you just data dumped it. So
Yep.
how do you actually allow comprehension to come in? Otherwise, a large majority of what we see in medicine and education is people memorized a whole bunch of stuff, but they have no comprehension. They're just parroting.
Yeah.
How does that help anybody?
See, in the military too.
Oh my God. We lose 10,000 people a year in medicine because of shitty handwriting. Like we have a way bigger problem on our hands than the level of comprehension based off the indoctrination of the information that you learned based off of what your teacher was telling you. And then we just give our power away and think that that's true. Anyways,
Yep.
I could soapbox on that for a long time. So the more I really started to incorporate how it works, right, where it works, the actual limbic system, what does the limbic system do? What does it house? What's in the amygdala? What's in the hippocampus? What does this look like? At the same time, what I was witnessing was the mental health crisis in my classroom. So I had guys that were, we become the person that we needed when we were younger for a large majority of
Yes.
our profession.
Absolutely.
And 1 in 4 men have been sexually abused. And so now you have spectrums, right? Either you become one of the most baddest mothers on the planet and you go into some intense special forces, or you become this version of yourself, which is in law enforcement, it's in corrections, it's in fire service, it's in even in the medical industry of becoming a doctor, right? It depends on
Yep.
your capacity and your willingness quotient, right? Not everybody wants to go to school for 10 years to carry a shitload of general liability. And so, if you think about the wounding, well, what's also happening live time in the field is that you're witnessing the same types of trauma that happened to you, or you're witnessing insurmountable amounts of trauma, and you don't have an outlet or any type of resolution for a lot of the decades of our profession, right? So you have this very
Yep.
old, archaic way of thinking, and not to deduce those guys, right? Because the good old boys, when shit hits the fan, that's who you want coming, right? But do
Yep.
they give a shit? That was the first time you saw a pediatric full arrest? No, they don't. And if you show weakness, you're a bitch. And so now it creates this culture of like, yeah, I'm good. And then your version of good is I'm going to go home and get shit-faced drunk. I'm probably going to cheat on my wife because I'm chasing drugs. And it's not talking shit about our profession, but damn it, that's what we do. Or we're chasing other feelings, right? It's like, okay, well, then I'm going to go skydiving because that's the only thing that allows me to feel, right? I'm going to jump out of
Exactly.
yeah.
That risky behavior, so you could feel something. Yeah.
Totally. But it's controlled, man, because I learned how to pack my own chute. You know what I mean? Like, ah. And so when you start to see all these things happening, or at least for me, that's what I was witnessing, right? In the field, I was witnessing patients as young as 10 years old taking their life. I was witnessing the addiction, the mental health as it pertains to what they were trying to balance for work life, right? Not all the wives were supportive, not all the husbands were supportive. Some of them had kids, some of them were going through. The universe just starts compounding for us, right? So how are we going to navigate these waters as we're trying to become something greater than what we once were, and who can dig in? And so you're watching all this stuff happening, and it was just like, oh my God, the download that occurred was just like, this is what I needed to build. And I had no clue, Denny, that this is what the route that I would be embarking on. If you would ask me 10 years ago if I'd be talking about colon hydrotherapy and the evolutionary side of our species, no, 0% would I have thought that,
Yeah.
and it's only in reflection, right? Looking back and being like, okay, so these were all the versions of myself that existed. This is all the shit that I have overcome as a human being. Here's the embodiment of all the information that I've learned, and here is my greatest gift back to humanity for the evolutionary side of our species while simultaneously reducing suffering.
Yeah. I think the greatest mission we can find ourselves in, like our second chapter in life, is how can I be of service to others? How can I help other people? How can I find a way to give back? And there's no greater mission to really dive into your true purpose and make sure that it aligns with being of service to others. And it doesn't have to be your job. You can do it as your passion project. Like, look, I get it. Finding a way to make money is important. And if you find a way to make millions of dollars, more power to you. But you're not going to be fulfilled. Like, I get it. Maybe it'll be within 2, 3, 4 years, but eventually you're going to get to the point where you're like, fuck, like I need to find a way to like lift somebody else up. Unless you're Dan Blazarian, because that guy still seems like a piece of shit.
Well, he's in a different dimension, right? Like, if I look back, I'm like, I wouldn't even fuck with that dimension. You know what I mean? Like, but think like his song. Okay, if you just think about the lyrics and how much we're unconscious,
Yeah.
you don't realize the magnitude of what we're being programmed with until you hear an 8-year-old sing,
No.
"Touch my dick and get some money." You know what I mean? Like, what are we doing? Otherwise, it just got a beat. You know what I mean? You're like, ugh. But it's downloading into our mind as our reality.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
my God. And then men are aspiring to be it. And then it's just
Yeah.
perversion. Just, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But to each his own. Because if you ask one thing that I learned, and I just got this reinforced to me not just a few days ago. If you were to go ask a large majority of inmates in prison right now if what they thought they did was right, their answer is yes. Every single person is generating their own perspective and reality that they do believe is their truth.
Yeah.
There's variability, there's commonality. There are things that we as a collective society have agreed on that has no morality, but even that's up to interpretation based off the person who's making that up.
Exactly. Yeah, we tend to think that we all live with social contract theory deeply rooted in our heart, but that's not the reality.
No, no, everybody's making it up.
Yeah.
And that's where we share this collective energy. And what we're trying to accomplish is to evolve that to the point where maybe sociopathy no longer exists. Because if you look at those lower dimensional realities and what they're doing and the heinousness of the behaviors, that's only through my interpretation. And so then the work becomes to truly remove judgment and just allow everything to be seen in divine order. That's part of their evolution as a species. It's no different than if we watch a hawk right now swoop down and take a little squirrel that was just trying to eat its nut and just takes it and rips it apart and eats it. That is normal, right? There may be
Yep.
some, animal rights people out there that are like, oh yeah, but that is the circle of life.
Yep.
We're witnessing that as a species, as human beings as well too, because there are a large majority that are still so primal, they do rape. We steal, we rape, we pillage. We don't have the morality or integrity as a mechanism neurologically. It's not even in the wheelhouse. And never would I condone those behaviors, nor do I align with that as the way that I embody my divine pathway. But I do recognize that those people are so primal in their evolution that that's their behavior.
Yeah.
How do we allow the embodiment of evolution of our species if we're blaming, projecting, judging, shaming, deflecting, doing all these things rather than just going inward, right? If all of us just truly focused on ourselves, How can I be the most embodiment of love? How can I show up unconditionally, which then emits from my body, which then that becomes who I am. Love is who we are. It is not given or taken.
Yeah, one thing I realized when I was getting, help and going through my initial treatment was I realized that oftentimes if you are completely just angered or bothered by somebody, it's because you see something within yourself. And I remember vividly at the treatment center that I was in, there was one individual that was just the embodiment of anxiety and would just be like in and out from smoking and constantly just talking to himself, and just you could feel the anxiety bleeding off this individual. And I'm just like, sit down, like you bothered me. You physically, like, just everything about you just angers me. And I realized, dude, you're a representation of the anxiety that I have within me that I can't control, or I feel I can't control, and I tell myself I can't control. And I'm like, once I understood that and I realized that, like, dude, if I see something within somebody and I'm really put off by it, stop. How is that showing up in your life? Where is that coming from? Where is that judgment coming from? It's like, if you're really angered by that person that's always being an asshole, being a jerk, and being dismissive of others, like, oh, okay. Why am I quick to make that judgment? Where is that showing up in my own ways, in my own behavior? And just maybe it isn't, but pause, reflect on that. Before you go off on somebody, look inward, realize that maybe there's something within you that's making you judge somebody. It's one of the biggest things that we can all take away and like realize, like, where there's judgment, there's an inner critic that's going to quickly pop up and say, nah, dude, that's you. There's a little bit of part of you that's an asshole.
Oh, yeah. Well, the only way we can see it in others is because it exists in us.
Yeah. Yeah.
And once if we could all embody that, my God, would we evolve as a species? So much of our time and energy goes outwardly, whether it's bitching about our kids or it's bitching about all the things, right, alongside of it. You're like, or we're just parroting the things that were bitched to us as we were children, which is part of that generational side of also what we're dissolving.
Yeah.
Our kids between the ages of some as young as 6 to 15 are just demonstrating back to us everything that we demonstrated from birth to 6.
I need to be very cautious and mindful of that.
We as a species, we're in this brainwave state developmentally when we're a kid. One of the greatest things that I learned, and it made me cry for a couple of days, was that kids cannot conceptually understand routine until they turn 6. Which makes sense, seeing how they didn't know they need their shoes every day. But then you're trying to get them out the door. The other thing that we're doing to them is we're putting them into situations where it's creating routine, but only out of our benefit, right? Out of my betterment.
I need for organization and order. Yeah.
Oh, yes. I was not saying that kids don't need sleep cycles and all the things, right? But if you look at it, they're in a theta brainwave state. They're literally just watching. And so if they're watching you be in urgency, hurry and worry, get your shit, we gotta go, where's your lunch, mama? Over and over and over again, right? Get in the car. And then
get in the fucking car.
And then you're even worse. You're like, don't cross the street. Look both ways. You're just all the time throttle the shit, scaring them about fucking everything.
Yeah.
Then that's what they become from 8 to 15. Now they're just demonstrating it back to you, right? And then here comes, there can be a lot of volatility, right? Not for all, but for some, because kids are our teachers and our mirrors. And then from 15 to 25, they're solidifying. That's us. That's all we did.
Yeah. I grew up in chaos. And one of the biggest things that I wanted to reflect on and understand going into fatherhood was how to be that stable source of calm, positive energy towards my kid, not the constantly yelling, constantly, you know, emanating and just permeating of chaos and anger and anxiety, like, because that gets passed on, like, genetically, like trauma gets passed down genetically. So already knowing that, now it's like one of the biggest things that I want to focus on is how do you pass on the idea or the understanding that it's okay to be calm, present, relax, and not always in a state of panic, because that was everything that I grew up with. I grew up with nothing but chaos. So how do we ensure that our homes aren't filled with that energy? Safe. Yeah, exactly.
You gotta feel
safe.
safe.
You're not going to get it right, but I'd like to figure out a way to ensure that more often than not, at least 70%, my kid's growing up in a calm home where it's not just chaos and violent energy and rush to make time hacks, rush to, like, dude, fuck that. I know what that is. Like, looking back and seeing how that manifested physically in my body as a kid, like, fuck, like, that's the last thing I want. Yeah.
Well, and all of it's made. So the other thing that we don't recognize, right? It's like Groundhog's Day, right? If every day I wake up and I'm late, then I should probably get my shit together 30 minutes before.
Yeah.
Or if I need an hour before my kids get up so that I can embody my energy before I go into making the lunches and doing the things and finding the backpacks and saying the same things over and over again. Where am I erring that they're not hearing the comprehension, or can they hear the comprehension and I just need to demonstrate? So we put ourselves into this Groundhog's Day or this trauma loop, right? And then because it can become challenging when you're at a jump point, right? You're like, okay, I'm sick of this. I see the pattern. Here's the trauma loop. I want to jump. And then we go to have this jump point. This is what you were talking about earlier in the conversation that feels familiar. So you're like, this shit up here is a little challenging. I'm going to back in the trauma loop until we get sick of our own shit again. And then it kicks us back out and we can stay in that, which is totally fine. Some people love that. They spend their whole life in it. That's okay. Growth is a choice. Evolution is a choice. Not everybody wants to evolve. Not even everybody thinks that we're actually made of light and information. We're gravitationally organized and held together by static electricity. Like, we're hucking through.
I prefer Meat Puppet.
We're hucking through space right now at 18.5 miles per second. We're moving fast enough, guys. Like that whole urgency thing. I mean, there's a lot that we're just dissolving collectively that wasn't ours, right? And some people have deeper ancestral trauma than others, but none of us are unscathed.
Yeah. And it's important to remember that none of us are going to make it through this experience alive.
No.
If you thought that, I'm sorry. Spoiler alert. We're all going to die.
I was just talking. It's so interesting about death, right? Nobody wants to talk about it. And I think some of it, because, you have a cute little kid that's like, Dad, I don't want you to die. And you're like, I'm never going to die. Then you lie. You lie just as much as you lie about all this other made up bullshit.
Not me.
The other thing that
when we breach
really
that topic
is how much I lied to my children. I'm so fucking sad about that, man. I'm like, why did I do that? You look back and you're like, man.
Yeah. I think I'm going to lie to my daughter. I'm going to tell her that we are Highlanders and from an early age, we'll watch the original Highlander, not that bullshit part 2, with Sean Connery. And I will get her to believe that at some point she will have to kill me. The quickening is that you have to do it.
Oh, shit.
That's, if I'm going to be a bad parent, at least I'm going to be very creative with the lies I tell my child.
This fucking dude you'll never meet is going to fly around and decide if you're good or bad. It's like the worst manipulation.
No.
And then the kids are like, the floor is lava. We're like, no, it's not. Don't make shit up. You better get in bed before Santa sees your ass. It's the fucking hypocrisy, right? Oh my God.
Oh, Christy, before I let you go, tell us about your clinic. Tell us what you do and how can we seek you out in case we want to try ketamine.
For sure. Well, I have a space in Encinitas that we serve the medicine, and you work directly with me. It's the embodiment. It's a true evolutionary piece to just sitting and going within, right? And using the
Yeah.
medicine as a catalyst. But really, my impact this year is far greater than myself, right? How do I make a greater impact or really embody this medicine and scale it, right? Is the question.
Yeah.
And so I really spent last year putting together an opportunity for doctors to take everything that we've learned and implemented and put it in as a standard of their care, to offer ketamine as a primary treatment modality instead of offering Xanax or antidepressive
Yeah.
pills. We're now offering this as a standard of care. And so that's really, I launched a nationwide initiative this year to empower physicians across the nation who are ready to work with ketamine as a frontline modality and to deduce the learning curve. So you're getting all of the intelligence, all the protocols, everything that we built out over this last 5 years, and even more so with how impactful that partnership with Dr. Bronner's is. I mean, we built out the first employer-driven benefit for ketamine in the workplace. And so the standards, the insurance coverage, the cash flows, everything that doctors need to truly start working with this medicine, that is now the mission. How do I go empower as many practitioners to be able to serve this medicine with integrity and love and the intention behind it, understanding that we're impacting consciousness developmentally.
Hell yeah. That is awesome.
Thank
Yeah.
you. It's important, man. I mean, we need it. We really need it.
Yeah,
And it's
we do.
safe.
We need more healers.
Yeah.
That's a reality. We need more people in the fight that are willing to take up the banner and help. And I think that we have more people that are more curious and more passionate about it. They're willing to get in this space. I'm excited for more veterans to get involved because I think there's something about being treated by somebody that understands your lived experience, understands where you come from. So I'm excited for that because I think there's a few. And if you're listening and you're in that space or you're getting in that space, come on the show. I want to hear how you're bringing some of these modalities to help our brothers and sisters. Christy, thank you so much for being here. I can't thank you enough for what you're doing. And I know that you're helping change lives. I can't wait to have you back on so we can talk some more. To all y'all listening, thank you for tuning in. But I'm not going to let you leave just yet. Hold on 1 second. Do me a favor. Go to the episode description. I'll wait. Okay, you're there. Click on the links below. Check out Christy on LinkedIn, on Instagram, and or do you have an Instagram? What's your Instagram handle?
I don't.
You don't? I'll make one up.
Thank you.
Put it in there. But you can find her on LinkedIn.
Email, right? Yes, you can find me on LinkedIn for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, go there. And please do us a favor, head on to Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Leave us a 5-star review. And, you don't have to write anything crazy. I don't know. Go in there and put, I don't know, bananas. Denny's awesome. Something like that. Yeah. And help us grow because those reviews matter to the algorithm. So do us a favor, do that. And after you're done, come back and finish this episode. Thank y'all for tuning in. Appreciate you. See y'all next time. Till then, take care.